Isn't that amazing? Government compassion sounds so noble, and it certainly wins votes. But the long-term effect of government dependence is pernicious. If we, the people, trade self-reliance for security, inch by precious inch, our liberty slips away. We become powerless in dependency. And this is the story of Barbara Wagner. How did this happen? How did America reach a point in her history where a government of the people, by the people, and for the people could offer physician-assisted suicide rather than the hope of life? When considering the future of American healthcare, the central question is this: who should control the personal and complex process of medical decision-making? You and your physician, or Washington? With characteristic eloquence, our president seeks to expand government's control over healthcare. Yet behind his soaring rhetoric lies this sober truth: whoever pays holds the power to choose. And as Barbara Wagner learned, the government will not provide everything for everyone. Sadly, the story of Barbara Wagner was not the first time individual liberty was sacrificed for the good of government. Let me tell you another story. After working for years as a paramedic, Suzette Kelo finally earned enough money to purchase a neglected but charming Victorian cottage. She gazed at her beleaguered little house, past the tangles of brush and weeds, and saw a heartwarming home of simple charm. With energy drawn from every American's dream, she toiled to renovate her property. Finally, dressed in a fresh coat of salmon pink paint, Suzette's home overlooked a beautiful view of Long Island Sound. However, even as Suzette basked in the delight of her cozy abode, the city of New London, Connecticut, quietly laid other plans. During the 1990s, the city of New London needed money. They embarked on a redevelopment project to attract industry, jobs, and cash. They needed land. Louder? They needed land. Unfortunately for Suzette, her house sat on prime real estate. The prospect of increased tax revenue from the new houses, office space, retail stores, and a luxury hotel proved irresistible. Clearly, New London would benefit if it acquired Suzette's home and the surrounding land. If the city gained control of her property, they could sell it to developers. Everyone was thrilled. Everyone, that is, except Suzette. On the day before Thanksgiving, a sheriff taped a letter to Suzette's door condemning her new home, along with the 6 other neighboring properties. New London ordered Suzette to vacate by the following March. For 5 years, Suzette fought to keep her home, and finally, she had her day before the Supreme Court. The question before the highest court in the land, and before us, is simple. Does a government's economic good, their need for money, trump Suzette's right to live in a home that she owned, renovated, and loved? 5 Supreme Court justices took it upon themselves to tweak the meaning of the Fifth Amendment of the Constitution of the United States of America. And in doing so, Suzette Kelo lost her home. For these 5 Supreme Court justices, the Constitution's meaning was no longer fixed. The Constitution had become a living, breathing document whose meaning evolved with culture. And have you checked out American culture lately? Rather than trying to figure out the original intent of the law and apply it to every case that came before them, these 5 justices expanded their constitutional role so they could do good. But whose good did they seek? This summer, we will watch the Senate confirmation hearings of Judge Sotomayor. There is really only one question we, the people, must have answered. Will she submit to the rule of law and the original intent of the Constitution, or does she believe the Constitution is a living, breathing document that could be tweaked with the good of society. On the surface, the stories of Barbara Wagner and Suzette Kilo appear completely unrelated. One has to do with health care, the other concerns property rights. However, they are linked by a common underlying political philosophy. In both cases, those with political power chose to seek the good of society over the good of the individual citizen. It was for the greater good of society that Barbara Wagner was offered physician-assisted suicide. It was for the greater good of society that Suzette Kilo lost her home. This summer, political leaders will extol the virtues of government-run healthcare. But when they do, we must ask, will these reforms empower the patient, the average American citizen, or will they expand the power of Washington? For nearly a decade, I've studied the history and philosophy of Western medicine. Since the days of ancient Greece, physicians have served one of two masters. Either physicians serve the patient, or they act as servants of the state. Hippocrates believed human life was a gift from the gods. As a result, he viewed the patient-physician relationship with sacred respect. For Hippocrates, the physician devoted himself to the well-being of the individual citizen. In contrast, Plato valued the good of the republic. For Plato, the ideal physician treated only the most productive members of society. Patients of little benefit, or for whom care was very expensive, were either killed or left to die. In the story of Barbara Wagner, I fear we see the resurrection of Plato. President Obama recently offered a disturbing hint of his vision for the future of healthcare. He suggested that one way to save money would be to eliminate procedures that, quote, evidence shows are not necessary, are not necessarily going to improve care. Maybe you're better off not having the surgery, but taking a painkiller, end quote. The difficulty is, he trusts government bureaucrats rather than patients and physicians to decide what constitutes effective care. For the past 10 years, I worked to preserve Hippocratic medicine. My nonprofit, Physicians for Reform, is dedicated to keeping the patient at the center of American healthcare. But to do this, I need your help. If you're willing to come alongside me, you can do 4 things. You can go to the website, physiciansforreform.org, and watch the Barbara Wagner again in your privacy. This is perhaps the most stunning 4 minutes of video I've ever seen. While you're there, you can join our team, because soon we will need to speak to Washington with a unified voice, and I'll need to know how to reach you. Second, stay informed. On the website, you'll find articles that you can use as you discuss healthcare with your friends, family, and neighbors. Third, you can look over the reform I have outlined. An alternative to Washington control, I've outlined a series of common sense reforms that actually decrease the cost of care and use those savings to help fund private insurance for those that need help. And finally, ask your friends, neighbors, and colleagues to do the same. Soon, we will need to speak with a unified voice if patients are to remain at the center of healthcare. Join me in this fight for freedom, as I cannot do it alone. For as medicine goes, so goes humanity. Thank you, God bless, and God bless America.